After playing Far Cry 6 for the first time last year and having a really good time with the game and sharing my experiences with the game right here on the channel, recently I decided to go back to Far Cry 5 in order to experience how it feels to go back to a previous title in the series and to kind of figure out how good or bad it feels. I would say it was mostly out of curiosity that I decided to do this, and I'm kind of glad that I did because the experience so far has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it when I first played it, but I've had an even better time now, which is something that I wasn't expecting, to be honest. The game's prologue itself is so powerful, it is so much better than what we get in Far Cry 6. Thanks to the Seed family, they are so menacing and charismatic. You feel that you are up against something big right from the get go. The game introduces you to the villains in a really powerful manner. It really shows you the level of influence they have on their followers, which really sets the tone for the entire game. It is a really serious title when compared to Far Cry 6, which to me personally was more of a goofy, mindless shooter where I had a ton of fun, but the story was something that I never found to be serious. The story and the bad guys are just better in Far Cry 5. I mean, Far Cry 6 doesn't even come close to that. Before moving on to the gameplay, let's talk a bit about the graphics, the look, the scenery of the game. Far Cry 6 is definitely the better looking game, which it should be since it is the newer game, and it has a better setting as well. And I think most of the better looking part of Far Cry 6 comes more from the setting than actually from the technical side, but I might be wrong. But Far Cry 5 is not far off from it. It has aged really well. It is not a bad looking game by any means, and you're definitely gonna enjoy it maxed out and have a really good time. But I personally really love the setting in Far Cry 6. It really feels like you are on a vacation, the whole Caribbean setting. It sets a very different kind of tone, and I really enjoy it personally. It really helps me relax just roaming around and looking at the scenery, which I don't think was the case for Far Cry 5 with me. And still, I really like the look of Far Cry 5, but I prefer Far Cry 6 in terms of scenery and the graphics and the overall look and feel. But it is a personal choice without doubt. Far Cry 5 is not a bad looking game, and Far Cry 6 overall is not that huge of a leap in terms of graphics over Far Cry 5. I mean, it is definitely better looking in every single aspect, but it is not a night and day difference. But the cutscenes in Far Cry 6 are just horrible. I don't know why, but they are just horrible, which is not the case with Far Cry 5. Anyways, while replaying Far Cry 5, I personally don't have any issues with the graphics at all. I think the game looks good enough. It is just the setting which feels boring when compared to the exotic Caribbean islands from Far Cry 6. Moving on to the gameplay, everything feels pretty much the same. It's the same standard Far Cry formula, but I do miss the Supremo backpack weapons from Far Cry 6 because they are really fun to use, really over the top. But I think it's good that weapons like those are not present here because they would take the game into a more goofier territory, which this title is definitely not aiming for. The gunplay is really fun and pretty much the same. I really enjoyed going back to Far Cry 5 after playing Far Cry 6, and I think it is still a really solid title. I personally enjoyed Far Cry 6 more because I love the setting, I love the new backpack weapons and whatnot, but I'll have to say one thing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, Far Cry 6 ended up going a bit deep into the goofy territory, which is something that I'm perfectly fine with. But Far Cry 5 seems a better package because it is a serious story with good villains and whatnot. Gameplay wise, I prefer Far Cry 6, but overall, as a game, I think Far Cry 5 is the better title. It is still really fun and totally worth checking out. I personally enjoyed both the games and I recommend both of them. There were things in Far Cry 5 that I didn't like when I first played it, like being abducted for a boss fight out of nowhere, like you had no control over it, which was really annoying. Then the weird balance issue in the characters department, where on one hand you had amazing bad guys with really cool personalities, but on the other hand there was not a single memorable character on the good side, and the protagonist was mute as well, which didn't really help the cause, and it was really awkward too. But despite of all that, I think Far Cry 5 is objectively the better game, whereas Far Cry 6 is the more fun one, in my opinion. But one last thing that I have to say is about the Far Cry formula itself, which is getting old. The enemy AI is really bad in these games, whether it is Far Cry 5 or 6. I am really not a fan of the enemy AI. The enemies are kind of stupid and only rely on the sheer numbers, which is something that should not be this way. I really wish they improve the enemy AI in the future Far Cry games, because that is definitely gonna improve the overall quality of the game on its own. These games were really fun, but I think it is time for them to try something new in the next Far Cry title, and let's wish them the best. Which Far Cry game do you like going back to the most? Do let me know down in the comment section, and please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace out.